Hello and welcome to Perspectives, where we take a deep dive into the issues of the day and where we take a look at people's opinion on such issues. I am Ruth Osime.
And I am Majekodunmi-Oniru, here today for another important episode of Perspectives. Our topic is school safety and educational crisis prevention. What is expected of the educational system in protecting our children and ensuring safer schools? Please stay tuned.
To train a child for more than a decade, only to lose them in a place that should provide them safety, is an unfathomable loss. Nowadays, with children dying or being seriously maimed, bullied and molested in schools, what we have seen are shoddy PR stunts and measly compensations in a bid to vindicate the school. Let's start with Whitney Aderino, the recent 12-year-old student of Christland International School who died last month during the school's inter-house sport activities at Agege Stadium, Lagos State. While the parents insist that their child was hale and hearty before leaving home on the said day, the school management denied any wrongdoing, saying she slumped at the stadium. However, her autopsy later reveals that she was electrocuted. In 2019, in this same school, a supervisor, Adegboyega Adenikon, was also sentenced to 60 years in prison from defiling a 2-year-old pupil. The mother of the child had raised alarm in 2016 that Adenekon raped her child, but the school, as always again, denied the claim and stood with the teacher, proclaiming his innocence until the Ikeja Sexual Offences and Domestic Violence Court found the teacher guilty of a 1-count charge of rape of a minor. There's more. On April 17, 2022, a 10-year-old female student of yet again this same school participated in a sexual act with some male students during a trip to Dubai. The incident was recorded and shared on several social media sites in Nigeria. The school accused the child of willfully partaking in sexual conduct and suspended her without acknowledging their failure to properly monitor the kids they chose to represent them at the World School Game. Just when you think these stories can't get any worse. We all remember the case of 12-year-old Sylvester Oromoni Jr. of Dawan College. He was violently abused by senior students for allegedly refusing to join a secret cult. Video clips of the deceased visibly writhing in pain surfaced on social media. A series of tests and x-rays conducted on him showed that he sustained internal injuries from the beatings he received from the students. But as they are wont to do, the school management denied the existence of a cult group, claiming the student was injured while playing, wait for it, football. Harrowing incidents like this have continued to jolt many people, especially parents and guardians, as well as federal and government authorities. What is most worrisome is the instinctive denial of truth by some schools when their public image is in question. Is this image more important than the life of a child in their care? Should such schools be allowed to continue running? Should parents continue to entrust their children's lives to these institutions? So many questions that need urgent, very urgent answers.
Very urgent answers and very well said. Every child should feel safe in school. Every parent should feel rest assured that children are in good hands between every drop-off and pick-up. Every founder, board member, executive leader, teacher, and service provider should play a proactive role in ensuring safety and avoiding emergencies. Our children mean the world to us. We protect them with all we have, and that includes making sure their physical, emotional, mental, and overall health stays optimally protected at all times. Within the past year, there have been multiple cases in the media of crises in Lagos schools. Incidences ranged from drowning, school bus suffocation, rape, and electrocution. The traumatic loss of a child is excruciatingly difficult on parents. With each of the aforementioned incidences, parents blamed the schools for negligence and neglect, and the public blamed government for lack of effective monitoring of schools. What steps are we taking to prevent future accidents and provide meticulous care to each and every child? Are schools mandated to employ safety officers and mental health counselors? Do state education boards conduct systemic safety checks and recurrent visitations to ascertain optimal operations at all times? At what point do we reprimand, suspend, or revoke the operating licenses of educational institutions with preventable incidences? Leaders across the educational ecosystem have a critical responsibility to plan against worst-case scenarios and establish preventative measures continuously. Co-host and I will have our usual discussion shortly, but for right now, let's watch this special report. Perspectives will be right back.
The safety of learning institutions is something that shouldn't be taken for granted. In fact, it should be prioritized. Some cases of negligence on the part of the schools have come under the spotlight recently in Nigeria, as the death of some students have raised questions about how much attention schools are paying to the welfare of their students. Every parent, when enrolling their children in schools, will trust the school to protect their kids and that adequate attention will be given to their growth. However, the possibility of accidents happening is one that can be envisaged, but it can be limited if schools do their due diligence rather than leaving things to chance. When incidents or scandals happen, some schools are more bothered about protecting their image than actually nipping it in the bud way before time. There is the case of bullying in schools that some don't pay close attention to, which is very common. Some other issues that are rife in schools is child abuse and molestation. But to ensure the safety of our schools, it is up to the administrators, educators, and parents to work together to ensure that students can learn in a stable and secure environment free of these issues. But what extra measures should be taken by parents, teachers, to shield their children from the ills of society? And in the case of an incident that claims the life of a student, how and what is the best way to compensate parents for their loss?
Watching that Sylvester's picture really broke my heart. You know, I've lost a sibling before, so I know what it feels like to lose a sibling, and I can imagine how painful it is for a mother or father to lose a child, because children are supposed to bury their parents, not the other way around. Now, what I find most infuriating, I don't know if you saw the video of Whitney's mother, where she was in so much pain, when she was crying about how the school refused to tell her what happened, and how they took a child from one place to the other before they found a place to take the child to.
There have been multiple videos.
You know, yeah, there have been multiple videos, and you just feel like you just think to yourself, why should any child be exposed to this? At the end of the day, the said school that we're talking about now, I hear, has 12 branches. How do you run a school with 12 branches?
It's like almost
attention
like a
to detail
system.
must be very challenging, because building a school is not just a money-making venture. It's also impacting in the life of a child.
Absolutely.
Do you understand? And then another thing too is that, whether we like it or not, parents too, directly or indirectly, some, not all, also play a role in the outcome of a child.
Okay.
You know, it's not just what the child learns at school, it's also what the child learns at home and brings to school.
Okay.
In terms of when children who bully other children, or in terms of children who sexually molest other children, what is their background like? What's their home like?
I mean, you mentioned 3 cases or 3 incidences with the
I mean,
school.
imagine how harrowing those stories
the
are.
second one, you said there was a 2-year-old.
Oh yes, a 2-year-old
raped.
That was raped, and initially the school sided the victim until Lagos State got involved and sentenced him to 60 years jail, and I hope they threw away the key. But the truth of the matter is, I don't see why schools instinctively want to defend their image before anything else.
Right.
After all, it was a doctor that this kind of thing happened to, his license will be revoked. So why should schools be any different?
Should we wait for 3 incidences to give such a school?
I don't think we should, but
multiple licenses, 12 branches across the nation.
I don't even think that schools should have more than a certain amount of branches. I'm not a businesswoman.
I mean, before that.
Exactly. I don't know how these things work, but I just think 12 branches is a lot to manage.
For a school.
For a school.
Like you said earlier, it's not a supermarket.
It's not a supermarket, exactly. It's a lot to manage for a school. And then secondly, usually when medical accidents happen, they revoke licenses. What are the penalties for schools when things like this happen?
Exactly.
These are questions that need to be addressed.
There's a point where you review their operating license, a point where you revoke it, a point where you suspend it. We need to
I think a high price should be paid,
because
you forget that when these things happen to these children, the trauma that they live with after, I'm talking about the ones that survive bullying and what have you. Fortunately or unfortunately, the other 2-year-old, she was young. Hopefully, it will not live to haunt her. But children who are raped, children who are bullied, you see a lot of all these superstars. They tell you their most harrowing experiences when they were young, they were bullied in schools. Bullying.
Well, how did the school support?
I don't think they support
their staff against the 2-year-old.
Oh,
like who?
That's what we're saying again about this supposed PR, damage control. And even if you now respond later appropriately, what people remember is your first instinctive response.
I agree.
The first cut is the deepest, and I think these issues have to be addressed. It cannot be swept under the carpet because we're talking about the lives
of our children, the future of our nation.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Anyway, we're heading for a short break, but stay with us because when we come back, we shall be meeting our distinguished guests, Buki Josh Taylor and Ekwa Abudu-Akinsanya. Perspectives return in just a moment. Welcome back to Perspective here on Arise News.
Olubukola George Taylor is a strategic communications expert, a public speaker, and an entrepreneurial coach. She is the founder of Robert Taylor Media, a 15-year-old strategic communications agency based in Nigeria. She is also the co-founder of Africa's first tourism app, named Crawl Africa. Buki is talented in public relations, new market entry, personal branding, and campaign building. Her work has seen her represent a diverse portfolio of local and international clients, such as the CC Yara Foundation, Grange Schools, Flutter Wave, and Facebook Africa. Welcome to Perspectives, Buki.
Thank you.
Buki is being joined here by Ekwa Abudu-Akinsanya, who is a lawyer, educationist, and chartered administrator. After co-founding Greenhouse School in 1995, Ekwa went on to get a Montessori qualification from the London Montessori Center and later a postgraduate certificate in education from the University of Nottingham. She is the co-founder and director of administration of Greenwood House School here in Lagos, Ikoyi, and world vice president and country coordinator of Olive Baden Power Society that funds the Girls Guide worldwide. Ekwa is a woman of diverse interests and talents. She's extremely proud of setting up a first-class vocational training academy, VPDA. She sits on so many boards and has also the book called Celebrity Fashion Today to raise funds for an orphanage in the Abu area of Ogun State, southwest of Nigeria. She is also a lover of art, music, and travel. In May 2017, Ekwa was conferred with an honorary doctorate degree of the State University of New York for philosophy in educational management. Welcome to the program, both of you. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
Impressive portfolios. I like women and power. You're very good representatives of that.
I agree.
But Buki, let's start. Today is not a very, it's a very sobering topic.
Sure.
And that touches the hearts of all women and fathers and people in general. I want to ask you, Buki, what is it with schools that they do not know how to manage crisis? Why should the first instincts be to protect their image rather than the life of a child in their care?
And it shouldn't be that way. Responding to things such as the death of a child is extremely important.
Exactly.
Very crucial because, you're dealing with the public, you're dealing with teachers, you're dealing with other students. How you respond is extremely important. And a lot of institutions should not wait for a crisis to happen before they have a crisis management plan in place. You can't be tone deaf as well. You must listen to how, the public is perceiving this, how they're reacting, and you have to communicate, in a supportive manner. You can't just be tone deaf and just say anything that you want to say. So people have to be, especially the institutions, they have to be very deliberate in how they manage these things. Your first response and the first thing that you put out there is extremely important. And I've seen a lot of statements made by some of these schools, and I'm like, you know what, that was a bit tone deaf. That's a bit insensitive. You're dealing with the loss of a child. Everybody can relate to that. You have to care about how you respond. And it can't be anybody responding for you. Don't call a teacher to write your statement. You must deal with a professional to respond to these things. And you have to follow through, because this is your reputation. And you're an institution that is assuring parents of safety. I mean, safety is as important as educating the child. And that's, at the hem of every school. So,
okay, go on, sorry.
So it's extremely important how you communicate.
But if you were the principal of any of these aforementioned schools, what would have been your first instinct as a PR person?
You have to dissect the situation.
Would you talk to them? Would you come out on air to talk about it verbally to show that, how
I think that
the
first step for me is to let parents, obviously you will inform the parents if a death of a school or of a child happened or whatever it is. And then you want to brief your internal team as well. I will set up definitely a crisis management team within the institution, and then of course I'm going to hire the professionals to communicate. And then of course you have to investigate, communicate with the facts, show empathy, show that you care. What are the supports, what support are you giving even students that are traumatized by this? What support are you giving the parents? Do you have grieving counselors? Who's investigating? Are you on the parent side? You can't, take it personal. You're an institution. Your job is to protect and provide safety for students. And so all of these things have to come into play.
I read from your bio that you advise clients on reputation management.
Yes, I do.
Do you think, Chrisland, the schools who have been involved in multiple incidences, this is the third one in such a short period of time, do you think their reputation can be salvaged in any way?
It's tough, especially when you have multiple cases, not just one, many. And this is where you need to actually wake up and say, we need to get things in order. No amount of PR is going to save misconduct, negligence, or any of that.
Or even death.
Or even death. You can't win. So what are you putting in place? What's there? What's your anti-bullying policies? What is your, you're having, such a huge event such as inter-house sports, and there's no medical personnel in there. You can't really function like that. And in this day and age where we have social media, where anything can easily be uploaded, opinions are given, the masses are following, you're being dragged left and right, you have to be careful.
I think the first thing is that they should show empathy, and then just let everybody know that they're going to do thorough investigations. Nothing more than that as a first response to everyone.
Because that's very key.
I think that's very, very important, that you show empathy, and then you let everybody know that you're going to investigate. Don't jump the gun and don't, make pronouncements until you've done your investigation. No, because there's a very short time between the time that you have to make that first statement and before you find out what has actually happened. So, empathy is very important.
I wanted to ask, like I was saying to my co-host, that in the medical fields, if you cause unnecessary damage or death, your license is revoked. There's a body that is in charge of the medical field, and I'm assuming the same thing applies here. In the schools, what bodies do you have that are the ones that will take action, immediate action, apart from the state government? What body do you have?
There's the Office of Quality Education and Quality Assurance. And then we have associations also that, talk to schools about what is happening, and they do school inspections, but that's amongst the private schools. So there's APEN, which is the body for school owners, and there's ASEN, which is the body for school heads of schools.
How have they reacted in this case?
Well, they have they're looking at the investigation, waiting for the investigation to come out, and then they will deal with it. There have been cases where schools have been suspended from APEN for different, or ASEN for a wide range of different things. Now, in terms of who is responsible, I know that you can sue for gross negligence. You can sue a school. The parents can sue a school in 2 instances. Where there's been negligent supervision, in the case where a teacher or you're supposed to have supervised the situation, because you were negligent, the children, accidents have happened, or premises liability. In that case where there's a situation where there's something that can cause injury.
Like witness case?
Yes. In fact, both.
Yes.
Both on both the negligent supervision as well as premises liability. So for us in schools, the first thing that everybody should know is nobody wants anybody in their school to be injured. It's a nightmare for school owners for something like this to happen. So no school will go out and want that to happen. But we have a duty of care, and you have a high duty of care. And in order to put that in place, you have to make sure that your environment and all your staff, everybody keys in. So you have to have school policies. You have a health and safety policy. You must have your safeguarding policy, child protection policy, first aid, crisis management, evacuation policies. You have all of them in place. Make sure that your staff read them. In fact, after the last crisis... Is there a
training session?
Yes, training session. All our staff have first aid training. They know what to do in a case of an emergency. So you have procedures. We practice, most schools do fire drills and all that. So, we practice things like that, and we talk about it. We look at case studies and stuff like that. So, for instance, when we are going out, you have to do your risk assessment.
Okay, let's say you were going for this entire sports now.
When we go, we use the campus stadium. So there's a risk assessment of an external risk assessment and an internal risk assessment. So we go there. I had to check. I know that we might have area boys disturbing disturbing us in that area. So we have police, we have LASMA, and then we have private security. We use K-Square. Then you have to have know where emergency services are. So we know that Lions Building, the police, is around the corner. Where's the nearest hospital? St. Nicholas Hospital. That's your external.
So those 2 things are important.
Very important.
To have around the vicinity
when you're going out to do an event. Your emergency services are very important for you to identify. Then internally, you have to check exits and entrance points. Make sure that you have security there. Toilets. Check the field. We even go the day before, we fumigate the field so that children are not bitten. You check as much as possible, broken glass, all this. There's a high duty of care. Then you have medical personnel on ground. You must have an ambulance.
Okay.
So, there's a lot of stages that you go through to ensure the safety of your children. Having now gone through all that, accidents may still happen, but at least you have done the best you can to ensure that you are keeping your community safe.
Okay.
You've mentioned quality standards that are essential for us to keep our children safe, and you in your school actually mandating and actually taking precautionary steps to ensure. But has this been standardized across board? Is there an educational board that makes sure that every school that has children enrolled are actually living up to such high standards that are necessary?
I must say the Lagos State, in the recent years, they've stepped up really. They do thorough investigations.
That's good.
Yes, they do. So they do it, they make sure that certain things are in place. Now, it's up to the school to ensure that they're actually following the policies. Some schools may not have policies. We can help. At Greenwood House School, we have so many different, the policies that we follow. We make sure that we send our team. In fact, over half term, we sent all the policies out again. They're going to be tested. The teachers, the staff are going to be tested, because you just need to keep refreshing, keep having workshops, keep on training, so that, we're making sure that we're doing our best in the circumstance.
Now, there's another thing I want to ask you, which I remember gave me sleepless nights. That video of that girl with the 4 boys. Now, rape, as we all know, is when you are fighting and you're under duress and you're fighting, reacting and, using all your force and might to prevent it happening. But that's not what we saw with this video. And that in itself tells volumes. I know, Ekwa, when I did you for Style a few years back, you spoke about different kinds of parents and different kinds of mothers. How do you explain a 10-year-old complicitly having sex with 4 other boys? Because if you even notice, the children, the boys, one of them was even distracted. He turned his back. Do you understand? There was no excitement or whatever. And that girl's video didn't look like she had done it for the first time. I'm sorry. So how do you explain where this problem can come from?
Okay, when we spoke that time, we spoke about different parents. We spoke about the tiger moms, the ones that are so forceful, making sure that their children are overachievers, and making sure that they don't have time for themselves, they don't go and play. They're the ones making sure that they're getting aces and, doing all the extracurricular. It affects the children because they don't have motivation apart from their mom. Then there are the helicopter moms, the ones who do their children's homework. They talk to the teachers. They fight other children who are not speaking to their children and all that. Those children have very low esteem, because their mom is not allowing them, and they're not allowing them to grow, they're not allowing them to fail, and at the end of the day, they end up having serious problems. Then there are the parents who are just themselves overindulgent. They're busy, they're at work, and they're, allowing the children to do whatever they want. Now, you can be any of these parents, and you may think that you are doing what you're supposed to do. The thing is, love your children, but be authoritative and be firm. But the thing is, with social media, nowadays, you don't know what your children are exposed to.
Exactly.
But how do you manage that, though? Because you cannot be with this child 24/7.
Exactly. So even when the child has been exposed, you need to constantly talking to children about what is right and wrong, about values. So it's a consistent and a constant thing that you have to do. Because from what I understand, this she's not a negligent mom.
The mother of this child.
She's not.
So where do you think she got this idea or concept or
it could be from friends, from going to friends.
At 10?
At 10, they have access to blue movies. They go, somebody is saying, oh, my father has this movie, let's watch it. Children naturally experiment when they're younger. They're like mommy and daddy and all that. If you don't supervise them, they will cross the line. So it's about supervision, it's about reinstating values to your children, because they can be exposed. Nowadays, even if you don't give a child a phone, you don't give them access, you put all your parental locks and everything, they will go out and they may have access and you can't go everywhere with them. So you just need to let them understand values and let them know that this is right and this is wrong. And you must state it clearly and firmly. And you are not your child's friend. You are their guardian. You need to let them know what is right and what is wrong.
That's true.
Just to add to that, I think that there are a lot of, excuse me, I think there are a lot of external factors.
Yes.
We're in a digital era.
Yes, that's
like you just mentioned, many of these kids have access to social media. Not just that. Many kids have access to what even their nannies are doing.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So you have that as well. So what you can do as a parent, you must, this is not back in the day where your parents didn't talk to you about sex.
You must.
You
must have the conversation.
Kids of today, you must have those conversations. who they're playing with, all of that stuff. And you know, there's a lot of parental control, even with digital devices. You can check and see what sites your child is visiting and X, Y, and Z. It's even important to know even how our kids communicate. Yes. All the slangs they're using nowadays that mean so many different things that parents don't know. Music they're watching, what the nanny's doing, you know, forgive me, with the driver, you know, whatever it might be. You never know where these kids learn these things, and you have to constantly speak to your child.
Do you remember that video? I don't know whether you guys saw it, about Kim Kardashian's daughter. She was singing on the video with some other star, I can't remember her name. But there was a big brouhaha that the contents, the wordings of the video, do you understand, were too vulgar for a girl her age. And that also raised eyebrows and brought up another debate, because even sometimes when you watch children at parties dancing, these suggestive moves they make, and you can tell they have no clue the kind of impact.
Sure.
You know, very seductive, seductive, and you see people clapping and laughing and what have you. A pedophile could be watching and be getting turned on by that.
Yes.
Do you understand?
They watch it from music videos and, you know, the words of the music. Even if you don't play that music in your house, they go out, they go to parties, and they hear the words, and they learn them.
And they have no clue.
And they have no clue what they're
When you have a
saying.
child who is sexually active at a very young age, you must also check to see if there is any abuse going on.
Yes.
Because especially
you
that
never
girl,
you never know.
You
never know.
Because
it could be a relative.
It could be.
Anybody.
There's so many instances. Yes.
Child abuse thing. It's not. It just sends chills down one's spine.
She may have been exposed to it.
She might have been, definitely.
But she was exposed to it. But in this case, she was willingly activated.
Because she got used to it.
Yes.
Because she got, oh my
because she got used
but
to
during
it.
times of no supervision from the parents, it could be anyone, a worker, a friend.
It could be.
But I also wanted to ask you, Buki, for instance, when there's investigation concerning anything or a situation that's happened in the school, what do you? I feel personally that the principal or the owner of that school should be suspended while investigation is going on. But that doesn't necessarily happen in this case. Why is that?
So I mean, if you look at very many different cases, even globally, somebody takes a hit.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? If under your leadership certain things are happening, then it might just mean that you're not a good leader.
Exactly.
And it's just not for you. So you're finding people resigning, you're finding people, you know, getting fired or being sanctioned or whatever it is. And I feel that should happen.
I will feel like Durham College and Chrisland, which are the two schools we're using now, owed it to the press to come out verbally and explain what happened. You know, at least show some form of remorse.
So when you look at a lot of crises that happen with children in schools outside of the country, the school is the one even going to the media before you, so they are ahead of that narrative.
Exactly.
The police is there, there's a press, there's all of these things, because it's obviously going to come out. Or in a digital era, it's coming out. So you are communicating before you're being accused of something.
Exactly.
Just to play devil's advocate a bit, abroad in the United States, when there's mass gun shootings, suicides, even homicides, they don't necessarily blame the school. Of course, there's some blame on who effected it, who took the gun, who held the gun. But it's not necessarily that the school was negligent, especially if they took preventative measures and put the right steps in place to secure the children. There are some accidents that just...
but I like that.
That's what I said at the beginning.
But I like that mask is one individual who is sick. It's not necessarily the school. It is an individual who brought his ailments or his mental state into the school.
Yes.
Sometimes you might not necessarily be a student. I mean, most of what we've heard in America that go to primary schools and stuff, they usually the culprits are usually grown-up men.
Yes.
So they just found a soft ground to attack him.
And sometimes the schools are the ones calling 911.
Yes.
On their students. It's not a matter of protect my image of the school or be defensive and all of those things. No, you're meant to have a safe environment. This child has done this, we're calling the police.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
But another thing I've also noticed, when they say, what's that phrase? Spoil the rod, no, spoil the rod and
Spare
spare the child.
the rod and spoil the
Okay,
child.
spare the rod and spoil the child. We've also noticed that sometimes in some of the schools, these children are overindulgent. They are spoiled from home, and of course the parents are huge donors to the school, and some of these teachers are intimidated by these children, including even some principals. So sometimes the discipline that you're supposed to impose on these children, you can't do it because you're thinking of daughter or child of Mr. So-and-so. So how do you draw the line? Especially if a child is delinquent, a child is a bully, or a child is stepping out of line. How do you draw the line and prevent the parents from coming back to come and attack you? Because you said things like that.
The parents can come, but you stand your ground and you let them know that it's either you follow our rules or you take your child out of our school, because we're not going to compromise on values and on protecting the rest of the children. So if your child is a bully, first we like to investigate what can, the circumstances. Very rarely you get just overindulgent children who are just bullies. A lot of the times there's something that is happening
Because they're reacting to something.
that they're reacting to. We had one case of one boy who was consistently hitting others, using the pencil and all that. Eventually we found out because somebody had, the parents had brought him in as their son. But we actually found out that he was actually adopted by them, and he had seen his parents hacked to death by Boko Haram.
Oh my
So he was reacting to that.
Yeah.
We've had another case where, somebody comes and like, this child is a bully. Why haven't you sent this child out of school? And I'm like, well, we're working with his parent because he had a dream that his dad was going to die. And he asked his dad not to go out. And his dad went out and had an accident and died.
Oh, God.
So he blamed himself. How is a 10-year-old and he was angry.
Yeah.
And he was it's not every single case that, people are like, why haven't you expelled him? Why haven't you suspended him? But we are there for the whole community. God forbid it's your child that, is going through that. So, we called in a child psychologist, and we're working, and he's fine. He's, great, and he's moved on. But, you can't just even condemn the bully. You sympathize with the bullied and make sure that the bullied is protected and is fine. You are stern in saying, look, you've crossed the line, you cannot do this. But you also have to find out that's not saying that they're just some children who are just overindulgent and who just lash out and feel they can do what they want, in which case most of the time is from home. And, we had an anti-bullying week last year, and we just had it this week. And it was the whole community. So the children themselves did skits they spoke about the ways you can be bullied, what to do if you're bullied, what bystanders can do. You must always talk. Silence is bullying as well, because you're not talking out loud. We spoke to the teachers about the ways the teachers themselves can bully children. We spoke to the parents about how they're raising bullies. Children are watching what parents are doing at home. Parents are hitting on their house help. They're being aggressive, being violent. The children pick up on that and think, okay, this is what I'm going to do. There's some children who are neglected and they're looking for attention. So they come, the only way they can get attention is by, acting bold and as if they can't, they can do anything they want. So, we even spoke to parents about bullying teachers.
Yeah, because that
yes,
happens.
because they do. But we have to be firm. At the end of the day, it's like, these are our rules. I'm very sorry. If you can't abide by our rules, then please take your child out. And most of the time, I haven't had someone take their child out because of that. They will calm down, and then we'll have a conversation and try and find the source of what is happening and try and solve it.
Another thing, do you have...
But many schools, some of them don't have the luxury of doing that because they are, already, maybe they're already making a loss, they're trying to put bombs on seats and stuff like that. So, You know, it's very difficult. But I always say, no matter your circumstance, you're better off, you know, holding your ground and maintaining discipline. And eventually, people will know you for your values and your standards, and they will come.
Yeah.
So
But do you
don't
also
compromise
think,
at that early stage. Yes.
Do you also think, you know, like how we're talking about the supermarket, do you also think that there should be a limit to how many branches a school should have, just so that to ensure that you keep your maintenance at its highest quality when it comes to safety, delivery, and everything else that goes with building the school?
I think it's all about capacity, to be honest, because one of the schools we mentioned has only one branch. Do you understand?
Okay.
And another one has several.
Yeah, but one branch and
it
12
has
branches, there's a
I
vast
know,
difference.
but you know, it's about your capacity. You know, it's about the systems and the processes and the procedures that you have in place.
So who certifies capacity? The school can't say, oh, I feel like I'm capable. There has to be some checks and balances from the government, from the educational board.
Yes,
sure. That says, okay, yes,
that
sure,
says,
you can get
okay,
another
yes,
license
you
to
can get
operate.
another
I think 12
license.
branches is a bit much.
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's
In
a
an
lot.
economy like ours,
Yes, it's a lot.
Yes, it is.
And another thing I also wonder, is there any insurance that schools give to, is there any insurance platform or any insurance procedure you guys do to, as school owners, for the life of the child or protection of the child or medical insurance or what have you?
We have medical insurance. So if you pay and there's an accident, you know, your child will, you know, an ambulance will pick up the child and the child will go to.
So that medical insurance is separate from school fees?
It's separate from school fees.
Is it optional or is it a must?
It's compulsory.
Okay, compulsory.
And then we also have, some schools have the insurance for, you know, for school fees, so that in the death of, case of the death of a parent, your fees are being paid. But I'm not sure, like the way we have group insurance for our staff.
Right.
I'm not sure that group life insurance, I'm not sure many schools have insurance for compensating for a child's
Do you
death
think they
or
should?
something. Yes, possibly.
Definitely.
Definitely.
I want to ask you, Buki, do you also think that schools should be financially expected to compensate? I'm not saying that money will bring back the child, the loss of a child, or bring back the trauma a child suffers through one incident or the other. But do you think that another thing that could also help schools with their PR image is to pay some compensation to the families of these victims?
You know, we have this conversation.
Yes.
I don't think that there's any amount of money
That
can bring back the
Yes,
child or
yeah.
that can fix a situation like this. Should there be compensation? I think so. I think there should, but I don't know that it should be publicized because then it can be taken advantage of.
Yeah, okay.
You know what I mean? And aside from compensation, I think there's also other ways to compensate, which is really support, empathy, and all of those things. I think it's so
that's much
crucial.
bigger than
You know, if you look at, you know, a typical school that has experienced, you know, what has happened to Whitney, for example, I didn't see any phone numbers for kids and families to phone if they're traumatized. I don't know if they provided or offered to provide to the parents grieving counselors and all of those kinds of things. I'm not sure. I don't know what their compensation plans are and everything else. But we need to take those things seriously. So compensation, I'm all for it. At the same time, I'm worried that if it's overly publicized, then someone could say, fall down the stairs.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and we just really don't want that.
earlier on.
Talking to you about a school in Port Harcourt where a boy ran down the corridor, nobody was chasing him, CCTV showed it. The glass panel clearly showed caution. There was a handle, he refused to use the handle, he pushed his hand through, and his parents are demanding. The school called the parents, took him emergency, first aid, took him to the hospital. They paid for everything. I think it was nearly about 700,000, and yet the parents were asking for a flat for the boy and millions of naira. So you know, you have to be careful.
It's so
but
strange. You
it
never
is
thought.
very important. There can be, if the parents can establish gross negligence, you can take it to court as a civil case, and then the court will award compensation for damages. As she said, nothing can bring back a child's life.
Right.
You know, but at least that, as well as support. If there was somebody who was meant to be supervising, that person should be sacked.
Yes.
You know, somebody should be made to pay for that lack of supervision, because I don't think there was any adults at the
Well, Buki, if you had to judge in terms of performance when it comes to federal and state authorities concerning issues like this, how would you rate it?
You know, I've seen situations where, you know, the government has shut down schools and done all of those things. Lovely, right? What I'm not seeing is what happens after. You know, who's being held responsible? What's the end result of all of this? A lot of people are still left hanging. A lot of people don't understand what the result of Sylvester's death.
Yes.
It's still there. You know, when you Google and when you research it, it still says his body's in a mortuary. I don't know if he's been buried now and whatnot. All of those things are there. We need to do better with how we communicate these things, even government as well. You know, you can't make vague statements that mean many things, that people can misinterpret. You know, you cannot be insensitive. You cannot, you know, we need to do better, because this is a situation that you really can't win. No one is going to side you. No one's going to clap for you. Someone's died. We're taking the mother's side. We're taking the family's side.
Course, naturally. And of course, naturally, as human beings, you know, the first thing we think is shut the school down until. But you, Ekwa, don't agree with that.
Yeah, you mentioned.
So explain why.
The matter is that to shut down a school causes so much anguish to the entire community. So you have children who are already traumatized by the fact that something happened to someone and it could happen to them. So there's that mental torture. Secondly, in addition to that, for a lot of children, school is, you know, home away from home. They have their friends, they don't have access to their friends. Most importantly, the children are missing out on their education. The teachers are not able to, everybody, the whole community, the teachers are being denied their income. Do you understand? They're being denied their vocation. You know, parents are at a loss. Where are you going to take your children in the middle of the school term? It's not that easy. How many spaces are available at, you know, for what you want? So shutting down a school is literally the last option, you know. As I said, there are these other things, but if there are schools that have been shut down for consistent negligence, and mostly if there's physical safety, health and safety, definitely a school, you know, can be shut down. But it's the last option. The last option.
So no, it was not throw the baby away with the bathwater kind of thing.
Yes. And you're denying so many other children, you know, their education, their well-being, you know, and it's a very, very sensitive and difficult.
Okay, Buki, your last word on this.
Yeah, sure. And just a quick question here is, if a school has a medical facility or the nurse or the school's nurse that's not functional, that couldn't save a Sylvester, should the school really be open still for kids to deal with staff that are just not competent?
I believe that the government ensured that certain things were put in place before they reopened the school.
Okay.
So I'm aware of that.
But like Lateral said, are these things supervised to ensure that they are properly in place? How many
schools are there in Lake?
Well, but once they are paying 6 million naira a year for, 10 million naira a year for, that's the least they can do.
That's the least they can do.
Anyway,
their duty. And I must say that, above all, I was telling her, I said there's the God factor. After you've put everything you can put in place, you've established your duty of care, you commit all your community to God and just pray for protection.
Thank you so much, Buki. Thank you so much, Ekwa. It has been an enlightening conversation, and I hope that everybody that has listened has taken a note or two from this. We can never keep taking care of our children. We can never stop praying for the best for them. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Parents, guardians and teachers have a moral obligation to children that can be easily summarized. Protect them from harm. You have to prepare the child for the path, not the path for the child. Children are not a distraction for more important work. They are the most important work. That's all we have time for today. You've been watching Perspectives here with me on Arise News. I'm Ruth Osime. And remember, life is a learning curve.
And I am Olatorera Majekodunmi-Oniru. Our schools must plan to prevent, respond, and recover from emergencies as delicately as possible. Kudos to every educational institution that stays true to their ethos, mission, and vision of providing highest quality education in a safe environment. We can all do more and speak up more to protect children from mental, emotional, and physical harm. Thank you for watching Perspectives. Thank you to our special guests for joining us today. Have a great weekend and see you all soon. Goodbye.